Today, we're beyond thrilled to welcome two incredible women, Lindsey Simcik and Krista Williams. When I told my daughters that I had the Almost 30 girls on this podcast, they were wowed because they've been following them for years. So the powerhouse duo behind one of the top podcasts in the world, Almost 30. They're also the authors of the book Almost 30, The Spiritual Guide to Adulting. Their podcast and their book are filled with real talk, personal stories, and actionable insights on everything from career meltdowns and friendship shifts to Saturn returns and learning how to truly love and honor yourself. They didn't just write this book, they lived it. Every pivot, body change, relationship question, and money mistakes comes from their own journeys and the wisdom they've gathered along the way, both for themselves and for the Almost 30 community. What makes this book so powerful is that it's not about having it all figured out. It's about learning to trust yourself, embracing change, and creating a life that feels authentic to who you really are. It's for anyone ready to transform, to use the messy times as a portal from their highest self, and to turn those moments of uncertainty into pure magic. We have been so excited to sit down with these two beautiful souls, and there's so much in this episode you might want to listen to it more than once. But before we get to our conversation, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
I am so excited to share our brand new sponsor with you. And this one is extra special because it's close to our hearts. It's none other than MT Meikle's incredible business, La Closet. MT has helped me with my own style so many times. And what I love about La Closet is that they work within your budget, they're Canadian owned, and they do their best to support Canadian designers and businesses. Their team of personal stylists has helped thousands of women and men feel more confident and put together. Whether you're starting fresh or just want to refine your own current look, they work with you to build your wardrobe that's uniquely you, aligned with your lifestyle, your personality, and your goals. They offer everything from one-on-one style consultant. They can help you elevate your professional image, or you can book online styling. La Closet helps you create a powerful connection between who you are and what you wear. And here's the best part. You can book a free 15-minute consultation right now by heading to La Closet and use the code HTMT. Their contact information is in the show notes, so check them out and start showing up as your most aligned and stylish self with a little help from La Closet.
All right, back to the episode.
So we are thrilled that the two of you are here with us. And before we get into, we have a lot of stuff that we want to cover with you. But before we get into that, I wanted to share something a little personal, if I may. The last couple of months for me, it's been feeling like that sort of dark night of the soul. And so normally what I do when I go through these things is I sort of slip into that doing and fixing things. And so I've really just been listening to what my soul needed, which was a lot more slowing down, time to myself, being in nature. So I was going for lots of walks with my dog. Where we live in Toronto, we live down by the lake and going for walks. And it felt like a little bit of divine intervention because while I was doing it, I was researching you guys. So I was listening to your podcast. I was listening to your book on audio, and I was listening to you on other podcasts. And I just want to start by saying, I'm going to get teary-eyed already, but the work that you're doing is amazing. And it really helps. It touches the soul. And I just thank you for just having the courage to be vulnerable and to speak your truth. And I know that you probably hear this from a lot of people, but your work is amazing and the world needs it now more than ever. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing, for this book, for your podcast, and just being such beautiful, open souls.
I think people think we could hear that enough, or it's always like, I have my moments, I have my days, I have my times where I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Does anyone care? Is anyone listening? Does this matter? And it really, honestly, I'm so grateful to God for always speaking through people and just reminding me of the path that we're on and just to stay the course and stay the path. And for you to say that, and a woman like you to recognize our work, it always never ceases to amaze me, the caliber of people that can connect with what we do. So thank you for propping me up for another day. I need it.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. And to
Yeah.
find, like I think when people are going through a dark night of the soul, it's really hard to find the light. And so for you to recognize whether it's our podcast or just other like signs that there is a way forward and there is absolutely transformation on the other side is inspiring. I think not only to me, but I think to people listening, because it can feel like how am I going to get through this? You know, like
Yeah.
I've never been through this before. And so I don't know the way. And so to like just trust the next step, to
Yes.
trust where you're guided is so profound. So thank you for sharing that.
And I think that's the
It's-
beauty of what you do and what podcasts do. It's that we realize we're not alone, right? That we've
Yeah,
all gone through
sure.
this and we will go through it again. But I think there's something in knowing that we're not alone.
Yeah, I think in our work, Lindsey and I met in a period of transition, in a period where I felt really lost. I felt really, really disheartened with my life and where it was going. I wasn't in a career that I loved. I wasn't on purpose. I wasn't making impact. I wasn't feeling good in my body. I didn't feel like I was in relationships that felt expansive or aligned. And I felt like I should have been further along, but also didn't know where further along meant, where I was going. And I know Lindsey was going through her own stuff. And it was really the genesis of the podcast, was feeling super lost and super alone, and finding our relationship as sort of like a respite and a landing pad for where we could have really deep, meaningful conversations where we felt like we were seen and we were heard and we felt like someone related. And it ended up being conversations that resonated with people all over the world, women like yourselves. And it's interesting that, you know, us at our lowest and us at our most lost almost felt like it was one of the most profound times for the show, and what really propelled the show to grow into what it is, because the rock bottom is often where the magic happens, and the rock bottom is often where the most vulnerability and truth and openness also exists.
Couldn't have said it any better. And like they say, for every negative experience, there's a positive consequence. And that's exactly what happened with you. And I thought, for our audience, rather than us introducing you, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves?
I grew up on the East Coast. I was someone who had these really clear visions of myself becoming a famous actress and, you know, starring on Broadway and doing all the things. And I was on a path to do that. It was clear for me from a very young age. I had no doubts, and I had the support of my parents, of teachers, of mentors to put me on that path and guide me to where they thought I needed to be in order to actually be successful in doing that. And I came to a place, you know, in my mid 20s where it just wasn't adding up for me. You know, I was going into rooms not being myself. I was trying to be someone else and was hoping that I would be chosen over and over and over. And statistically, I was not chosen most of the time. And while that definitely created a resiliency in me, I just felt like I had more to give to the world through my talents, through my just passion for life itself, you know, my passion for creativity, and for really supporting people. And it would, as it would happen, and we told it many times, but it never gets old. I met Krista during a time in my life where I was just questioning all of this. I had recently moved to LA. I was, you know, my bank accounts were in the red. I was furiously teaching Soul Cycle all over Los Angeles, you know, not not feeling amazing in my body, even though that's what I was teaching people. And we met at a time that I thought I should have it all together, and I didn't. And she felt very similarly and was moving through her own intense period of like, what the fuck? You know, whether it was her relationship with her body, relationships, and she can go into this, but we just found such peace in our relationship and such comfort, and like laughs and joy in the midst of total chaos, and our lives falling apart. And what was really beautiful in those early months was Krista asked me, she said, would you want to start a podcast about what we've been talking about as friends? It just feels so natural, feels so good. And I feel like we're not the only ones moving through this. And I was like, yes, I'm always down to create something, no matter what the outcome. And for the first time in a long time, I was actually taking into my own hands what I wanted to create, what I wanted to take part in, not just waiting to be chosen. So it was a really powerful shift for me. And from that place, recording on our closet floors for 6 months, and just basically seeing what this thing was, seeing
Yeah.
how our chemistry felt. We created Almost 30. It was a very organic, very real um, thing that started within our relationship. And then we shared it with the world in September 2016. And since then, we've released episodes every single week. We've, you know, just grown a community around the world. And it's been the biggest surprise, the biggest gift in our own personal transformation. But I think now in the lives of so many.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm the other half of Lindsay of the Almost 30 podcast. And I'm someone that I think has been a lot of things in my life. I've been a rebel at times. I'm a very deep feeler. I'm a very curious person. I've been an overachiever. I've been an underachiever. I'm kind of a soul that's here to do a lot of things. I think the one thing though is I've always been someone that wanted to find purpose, and I always wanted to find a reason for being here. I was existential when I was like 7. I was like journaling, like, what's the point? What are we doing here? Like, I've been a deep feeler and a big thinker my whole life. And so that led me to a really beautiful endpoint of where we are now with our business and our lives. But for the most part, a lot of pain on the path, really being like, I'm in places I don't feel myself. I'm not living up to my potential. I feel like I came here to do something, but I don't know what that is. And I don't feel like the corporate world is it. I don't feel like blogging is it. I don't feel like all these things are it. So I spent a lot of time just trying new things, experimenting, putting myself out there, failing in public, failing in private. And when I found Lindsay, it was really a point where I wasn't trying. We found each other at a place where it felt good. It felt natural and it felt right. And the creation of what we were doing with Almost 30 just felt like a extension of who we are. And so it's
Mhm.
taught me so much on our path about letting things flow, being in trust and surrendering to the process. And now, I'm host of Almost 30. I'm a coach. I'm a teacher and I'm a healer. And I'm really here to be the most myself and encourage others to do the same.
Mm.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your stories. And I have to say, your podcast and your book, I couldn't put your book down. I felt like I was reading the best, almost I would think like a fiction novel, but it's factual. I felt you just dive into it. And I felt like when I was reading it, it's like, wait, this is not for almost 30. This is almost 50, almost 60. I don't want to say that too loud. But so it was like, I can relate to everything that you said. So I felt that your experiences in your 20s and almost 30, all your stories can relate to all age groups.
Mhm.
And I can't wait till your books of almost 40, almost 50, and almost 60 come out. So, but it was really profound. So thank you.
Yeah. So what we were thinking with how we wanted to do the podcast, because there's a lot that we want to unfold with you. So we thought we would sort of do it in chapters like your book.
Mhm.
And we kind of pulled what were the chapters that sort of resonated with us and that we thought our listeners
Yeah.
would really like. So part of it is how it began and then Saturn Return. But I love the story of how it began, where you were just saying where you two met and that you created this podcast when podcasts weren't yet a thing. And it was, if it was more sort of male dominant, like it was more
Yeah.
men who were doing them and not women. And here you are, these two young women doing it. What was that like? Because I just think that's amazing that you did that.
It was a wild west. I feel like we're super blessed that we started during that time because I don't think we had too many people to look to and compare ourselves to. So
Yes.
we really felt free to, as much as we knew how, to be ourselves. and to just let her rip and not care so much that it wasn't perfect yet. And I think honestly, that is part of what was so relatable, I think, about our show. Not only did we share almost everything, but it wasn't, super polished and
Yes.
perfect, but I do feel like people felt our hearts and they felt just the authenticity of what we were moving through and what it was bringing up for us. And um yeah, I'm so thankful that we came up during that
Yeah.
time. And, I think as the industry changed a little bit, we grew alongside of it, thankfully, but we definitely felt the pressures at points, to focus on the numbers and to focus
Mm.
on what other people were doing and how we could do it like them or do it better. And that's not to say that's a bad thing. Our show is also a business, so I think it's
Yes.
strategic. And we also had to just keep our perspective really healthy because what made our show successful was not necessarily the perfect strategy. It was us showing up in our truth in the moment and not being afraid to share it, and not being afraid to, yeah, put things out there that felt a little vulnerable,
Mhm.
because what we've learned is that that act of sharing, of showing up as yourself, is something that we modeled in those early years for our
Mm.
listeners. And I don't think I realized that
Yeah.
until years and years later. But when we would meet our listeners in person, they would share those stories of like, you really gave me the confidence
Mm.
or the courage to say the thing or to leave the job or to,
Yeah.
have that hard conversation in my relationship. So yeah, I'm so thankful we
Yeah.
came up during that time because it was a very, very sweet spot in the like long life, I'm sure, of
Right.
podcasts.
Yeah.
I feel like you almost created the template for podcasts without even knowing it, because there wasn't a lot out there already for you to have to say has to be this way or this way. Just being authentic and organic. I think you just kind of set the tone for
Hmm.
podcast after that.
And there's a beautiful quote. It's like, if the path disappears, then you know you're on the right path. And it's for us was, there's a beautiful benefit to creating your own path and paving your own way. And especially for someone that could get lost in comparison and could get lost in maybe being inspired by someone else or copying someone else. It's like, because we were doing things for the first time, we were making it up as we went. It was just the perfect experience for both of us because
Hmm.
we didn't have anyone to compare ourselves
Hmm.
to. We didn't have everyone to feel less than or have imposter syndrome with. It was like, actually, gave us the best opportunity, where someone else, it could be hard for them because they don't have like a guide to look to. But for
Exactly.
us, it worked really well. So it didn't mean that we didn't feel like every day we felt like, oh, this is working and this is great and we're on the right path and, success is ours. It meant that every single day we were showing up and doing what we needed to do in that moment for the next day, for the next day, for the next day. So it kept us present because we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what we were building. And we were able to really look more forward when we were able to quit our full-time jobs, eventually after 2 years, and really build the business. But what
Mm.
it was is focus on our connection, focus on what we were creating, and focus on the present moment, which is what we needed so badly in our lives as people that had been so obsessed with the future, so obsessed with what was to come. And it allowed us to create something really magical. And yeah, hopefully a template for women to use, for here and to forevermore, if they want to support themselves in expressing and being who they came here to be.
Was
I
there a
think,
point like, where you were like, "Oh my god, like, this is the turning point where people are actually listening to us and we do have something really special?"
Yeah, I'll never forget, we were there's a Facebook group. So we created a Facebook group. Facebook groups were poppin' and huge. So we were wanting to connect more with our community, outside of just the audio, because it was almost like we were talking and then the audio was going out, and then we were like, where are we talking to the people that are listening? So we created this Facebook group that existed on Facebook, and there was like, 20,000 people in it at a period. And I'll never forget, one day I went into the Facebook group because I was so active. I was like in it all the time. And there was a woman that was really struggling with her health. She had a very rare brain tumor that was just, something she was really struggling with, something that she went through, very rare, unexpected, and was in it. So, in addition to seeing all of the support and love and kindness that so many women that did not know this woman gave her, and spaciousness and just grace, there was another woman that was in the group that had the same exact health condition. And she was like, they had somehow found each other in this space. And it just really was this kind of weird effect for me of all of these people in this group have their own very complex, deep, and dynamic lives. And they're all choosing to connect with us and connect with what we're sharing. And we've impacted 2 women across the world that have this very unique experience, that have been able to find each other through us. And it just felt like this moment where I was like, oh, this is bigger than us, and this is bigger than what we're doing. And there is healing here. There is, the kind of a butterfly effect of now they meet and then they connect and then this happens. And I could sort of see the web effect building that I had never experienced before. So I remember that moment very vividly.
And I think another one that stands out to me, we went on a world tour, and Krista and I decided to go on this tour because we wanted to. We thought it would be really fun to meet people in person. But if we're being honest, we didn't know how many people would show up. We just knew we had listeners in different parts of the world, and we were hoping that they would come and join us in person. And we were in San Francisco, and we're holding a live event. Our friend Lacey Phillips was our guest. And I just remember stepping out on stage and seeing nearly 500 people in the audience at the time. We were only a few years into the podcast. And hearing the screams and roars and laughs, and even though that's a little like ego based, it felt like I had walked into a room with like 500 of my friends. Like I felt like I was at home, and it felt very similar to just being on the podcast and being able to walk into the studio and be myself. I felt like I could walk out onto the stage and be myself, which I had never really felt before. So to know that people were willing to support us, to come see us in person, to, further love on and engage with what we were creating. I knew that this was different. I knew that we had something that not every podcast had.
Yes.
We had the trust and the connection with our audience that was very, very, is still very, very special.
Yeah.
Well, I think because you're just so yourselves, which people can feel and sense versus, being somebody that you're not and making it like an act.
Yeah.
And even when you're saying that, like it's not, you're saying it's, I don't think it was ego based at all. Like you're both talking about how it touched your souls, how it touched your heart. And it wasn't about, oh, we, got a check for $1 million or we got this deal. Like it sounds like sort of the affirmations for you were very soul based. Yeah.
I do really want to address Saturn returns. You talk a lot about this in the beginning of the book, and I was really interesting for me because I never really knew much about it. Can you explain to us Saturn returns and why it's important?
Yeah. So Saturn return, for anyone that's not listening, that's not an astrology girly or boily, this is something that can really help you and has helped us really understand our lives and some of the changes that have happened in our lives in a deeper way. So we can go the brain-based route, or we can go Saturn return, which is the astrology-based, but I can kind of cover both. But overall, the period between 27 and 30, your late 20s, is such a period of deep transformation and growth in almost everyone's lives. From a general level, this is when most people are getting married, most people are having kids, most people are, in debt from college, they're moving, they're getting their first big job, they're transitioning jobs. Like there's a lot happening during this time just from a socio-cultural level. And then from an astrological level, which is the Saturn return, Saturn, the planet, which represents almost like the cosmic daddy. It's here to teach us lessons. It's here to implement structures and systems. It's here to make us become the person that we came here to be. And oftentimes that doesn't always look graceful. It doesn't always feel good. Growth is not always fun. It's not always beautiful. But Saturn, the planet, is going to show us during this period in time in our life where we can grow and where we're not currently aligned. So it means that Saturn is hitting the same point in your natal chart as it was when you were born. So Saturn's returning to the same point in the sky as it was when you were born. And this will last around like a 3-year period for most people. And you will be experiencing a lot of changes and upheavals. This could mean job losses, job transitions. This could mean relationship breakups. This could mean you move. This could mean money issues. This could mean body issues. Really, everything that is keeping you from being who you came here to be is brought up to the surface. So for me, that meant I was going through struggles with my job and career. I didn't know what I wanted to be or what I was doing here. I was really struggling with my body. That was a journey that I had been on my whole life, where I had really hated my body and I wanted to change my body at all costs. So that issue was really brought to surface for me in a really deep way. That also meant friends were coming and going from my life. I just had like a lot of people coming in and out. So it felt really chaotic. Um, it felt really tough, but it really was everything that happened in this period, because I met it with consciousness and I met it with, you know, like a gusto and a belief that I could live a life that I love, became something that was really beautiful for me. So everyone goes through it. That basically comes to around 30. It's not something that anyone misses. You can find out your timing on our website. We have like a calculator if people want to do that. And I think for Lindsey and I, when we met, when we felt super lost and we felt like we were going through so much, understanding the Saturn return was really just this like, really this permission slip for us to be like, okay, this is normal. This is natural. Everything is happening for our greatest good. And this is in support of who we are becoming. And so with that awareness of the Saturn return, it just supported us really in having more grace and compassion for ourselves, and then preparing for a future that we feel really excited about.
Interesting. I mean, I went back and kind of looked back at my life after reading this chapter, and at 27 and 54
Mhm.
were pivotal moments in my life. I went through relationship, probably the biggest um, segment of my life, and one meeting, one ending. And
Wow.
yeah, and it was like when I read this, it's like, okay, but it's too bad I didn't know this at the time, and that I understood Saturn returns.
Mhm.
And with this, I'm hoping that our listeners can actually make reference and say, oh yeah, this is what you guys spoke about, Saturn returns. This explains it. Be patient, be loving, embrace it versus pushing it away.
Mhm.
So thank you, because gave me that moment of realization. It's like, that was my life.
Mhm. I was just going to say it's a beautiful example of, you potentially probably at the second Saturn return coming to learn a lot of the lessons that the first one brought up. It's like, here's this part of your karmic contract, your soul contract in this lifetime is to learn in relationships, or to have relationships feel easy, really good, hard, whatever the things are. And then the second Saturn return just gave you that opportunity to be like, how are you in relationship? How are you meeting your relationships? How do they feel? Have you learned the lessons that life is here to teach you,
Hmm.
and really use them for, your growth? And so the hope is that people can, during the time of Saturn return, really be curious about all the changes that are happening, all the rock bottoms, all the challenges, and just sort of see them in a way of, how is this in support of the life that I want? How is this relationship ending going to let me be the person I came here to be? How is this
Exactly.
friendship ending going to let me out of a toxic dynamic? Like, everything has potential and everything has purpose. And when we have that awareness, it can make things so much better.
Hmm.
So if we move into that, then your chapter that you had on challenges, and you touched on it a little bit at the beginning. Um, I always think that I know personally when I've gone through challenging times, I always end up learning and growing. I remember as a teenager, that's when my journal, or my poetry, it was like,
Yeah.
I would sort of dive into that. And I often say to my boys, it's like, if you can stay in this, if you can stay in this discomfort, your freedom is going to be on the other side of it. But it is so much easier said than done. And I find um, sometimes people, that's where they sort of, whether it's like alcohol or other things they do, how can we stay in those challenging times? Like, what are the things that can sort of ease it a little bit so that we can stay in it?
Yeah, it's so beautiful that you shared that with your boys. I think it's so profound and so important to teach this as young as possible. It's no wonder that we want to eject ourselves from the moments that are really, really challenging, that bring up a lot of fear. Our brain is a primal brain, that fight or flight is a very real thing in the face of something that's not life threatening, but to our brains, it feels like it is. Say you had a friend who totally cut you off and your relationship suddenly ended. That is activating the primal part of you
Mhm.
that feels like you need to be in relationship and community in order to survive. And so the brain is something we have to really get to know, um, and understand, and know that that is not our true whole self. And we talk about this in the book and label it more as the soul, or capital S self. And I think, for me, it's been so helpful to be able to stay in it when I'm connected to my heart, when I'm connected to my soul. Those two are synonymous for me. And the reason why it helps me to stay in it is because, one, I feel more connected to something greater than me. And I thus feel less alone. Even if I've lost the friend, or I've lost the job, or I've lost the vision of the path in front of me, I know that I am being guided by God, is what I believe in. But you can believe in your guides guiding you or your soul leading you. Um, and it just becomes something you don't have to shoulder by yourself. And it helps me to stay in it.
Mhm.
Um, and then, when I am in my heart, I know my truth. And I think when I know my truth, then and I embody my truth, I trust myself more in more moments. And I think when I'm staying in something hard, it can be hard for my brain to understand why.
Mm.
But when I trust myself to stay in something because I know it is for my greatest and highest good, and I know that my soul guided me here, and I know that God is supporting me, then I'm able to fully be present for what is, and like what is wanting to be learned, to be processed, and to be alchemized within me. So I would say those two things have been just really, really helpful in helping me stay in. And um, I also just want to add that I think life experience just helps you to build an archive of moments where you stay in it. And then
Mhm.
I look back on moments where I've stayed in it, just like you're teaching your boys to do. And they're going to look back and be like, wait, I feel like I've been here before. I've had
Mm.
this feeling. I've been this afraid. I've been this unsure. I've been this uncomfortable. And it's never lasted forever. And if I stay in it, there's usually something really cool on the other side. So you build this archive or library of experiences and trust in yourself. And eventually it just becomes how you move. You don't hit escape when you're in those
Yeah.
moments.
Sit in it.
You stay.
It's funny. Oh, it's not funny. So I can relate to everything that you said because I had to sit and pause in silence. I would say on my second Saturn return, is that what it was, at 54, when I didn't escape like you spoke about. And I sat and leaned on my God, and day after day, just had the comfort of being alone and learning about myself.
Yeah.
And that was powerful. And I remember that year so well, that it was pivotal in forming who I really am now. I think I was kind of just forming myself to be who I thought I should be. So
Yeah.
in reading that chapter and just with your words right now, it made me realize that, okay, this is what I did. So thank you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
What do you do, Krista? You talk about what does it mean? Like, what does it mean to actually live in alignment with your soul? Because
Mhm.
you hear people say that, but sort of what does it mean?
Yeah, it is the big question. And I think in life I've oscillated in and out of my belief of what my soul is. You know, we could have a part of us that believes so much we're on our soul's path and is not. But what I've known and realized in my life is that I think myself, and probably you all as well, and your everyone that's listening to a show like this, is deeply and divinely guided. So
Mm.
wherever I go and whatever I do, I'm going to get knocked back to my soul's path no matter what. So how do we listen to and align with our soul? I think you just provided a beautiful example of most of the time it happens in silence. It happens removing ourselves from other people's opinions or perspectives. And it happens in the continuing to turn back in to ourselves and not run from ourselves. So when we don't run from ourselves or the parts or, you know, who we are, we invite in our soul. And our soul really meets us in silence. Our soul really meets us in quiet. Our soul really meets us in the unexpected moments, you know, when we invite it in. For many people, they want a really beautiful life. They want abundance, they want relationship, they want all these things. And maybe they don't want a deep connection to their soul. But I think for me, the soul connection has been the number one priority because it has given me peace and it has given
Mhm.
me purpose and it has also given me all of these things. So to find our soul, you really have to get quiet. You really have to turn inward and you really have to get curious about the voice. And as a last thing, for many of us, because we've shut off the voice of our soul for most of our lives, you know, the soul isn't always going to be the thing that's going to get us $1 million or get us a hot boyfriend or get us a six pack. But we usually prioritize the voice that gets us those things for most of our lives. And the rock bottom moment gives us the opportunity to connect with the thing we know that's greater than all of those when that goes away. And so rock bottom moments can also be really, really beautiful opportunities for that, and for living a life that's more aligned. But I will say that the life that you live when you're aligned to your soul is the most satisfying, the most peaceful, the most beautiful, and the most magnetic version of you exists within it.
Yeah.
I, I just want to confirm the power of your book because
Mm,
in my 50s is when I started
mm,
identifying with my soul,
mhm.
my challenges. Now my Saturn returns. But if I can have my daughters in their 20s or the world out there in their 20s start that thinking at that young age and
Yeah.
to be at my age more knowledgeable and powerful and owning all this, that's, you've done your job.
Yeah.
You've done your
Yeah.
job.
I can't tell sometimes if I'm like envious of the younger generation for
Yeah.
this or if I'm excited. You know, there's sometimes a part of me that's like,
Yeah.
man, oh man, you guys got it good. We really had to like, but yeah, that's my ultimate dream is to help women feel
Yeah.
the feelings that I wish I felt during that time.
Well, and I thank you
Mm.
for my daughters at
Oh.
27, 28 that they can, learn from this and be stronger.
Yeah. Um, if we talk about the soul a little bit
Yeah.
more, Lindsey, in chapter 4, you sort of share your journey with faith and how you once resisted the idea of prayer. And you say something really beautiful that faith isn't about certainty, it's about trust. So, for someone who is feeling disconnected spiritually, and even sometimes when we do go through those challenging times, we think that we're alone or we think that God has abandoned us. How how can we sort of get back and how would you encourage someone to begin to like reconnect with that faith again and that soul, their soul again?
I've just had so many moments in my life where my human is running the show and my human says, "How could this happen to me?
Yeah.
I'm a good person. Why is
Mhm.
this happening to me?" Um, and just being so in the density of that. And so I grew up, just to kind of give a background, because I think a lot of people might relate in some capacity. I grew up Catholic. I was raised Catholic mostly. We kind of church hopped in the beginnings, just kind of testing out different Christian churches, if you will. And then I went to a Catholic school and they're like, you should convert. And we were like, sure, let's convert. So I was raised Catholic mostly. And while I'm so grateful for my Catholic education, I just didn't feel connected to God at the time. It felt like a lot of rules and a lot of ways in which I needed to be and to memorize things to get to God. And so I just felt disconnected and honestly pedestalized God in a way that I don't think he wants to be pedestalized.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like I couldn't have access to him unless. And so my journey back to God has been a beautiful one and a windy one. But ultimately, I feel like I found God again through my now marriage. And I read about it in the book, but it's been one that I've been able to redefine for myself. And I'm able to speak to God at any moment of every day. And Krista and I, share about this pretty openly on the podcast, just our journeys and, how we connect with God daily and moment to moment. And I think for me to have that as, the backbone of how I trust my life is just the coolest adventure ever. And I think what has been really helpful is to rebrand these seasons of life where I feel like nothing is certain, where I feel like plans are dissolving, where I feel like, you know, um, I should have more things together, solidified. And I've just rebranded them as these seasons of just adventure and opportunity and curiosity. I'm curious what God has in store for me. I'm like, well, I don't know, but I know
Yeah.
he knows. So let's lean in and let's just show up for every day, you know, with the utmost trust in his vision for my life. And it's just surprised me over and over and over, like how much better it is than my own like human mind can imagine.
Yeah.
So I think that is what's really fortified my faith and trust in God is just those moments where, I know I can't do this by myself. And I'm just in constant conversation through living my life with God. And he's just shown me all the time that he's got me and that the plan is never going to be exactly how I personally, as a human being, imagine. And that the moments that feel just like untethered to what I know is true are actually the moments that I'm meant to become more of myself and more, in faith.
Wow. I feel like I have a parallel life to everything you just said.
And I always think of that. I'm not Christian, but I always remember hearing it once where it's like footsteps on the sand or something, where somebody's walking on the beach and it's two sets of footsteps. And then when they go through that challenging time, it's one set of footsteps. And they say, why did you abandon me, God? And he said, I was carrying you,
Yeah.
which
That's a
I
good
always thought
one.
was
Yeah.
so beautiful.
That's
Wow.
beautiful. I like that. It's
Yeah.
just, it's funny how we, you don't understand God as very much in those beginning years. And then when you have that moment of realization that, wait, he was there for me, then you see it almost every day, how he shows up. And I go by those words every day. I just say, I trust and I believe. So whatever happens, happens. And I love that you shared that because I think a lot of young listeners and other listeners can really try to define their God and how their God shows up for them.
Krista, in
Yes.
chapter 5, you share about your relationship with your body. And just thank you for that chapter because I think it is something that so many women struggle with comparison and I think perfectionism. And as you get older, like I'm nearly 60 and it doesn't get better. It just changes to women complaining about their wrinkles and stuff like that. And it's almost like that's the norm, which makes me so sad. Like I could look at you and say, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. And then you're like, oh yeah, but I'm having a bad hair day. We always have to sort of
We
put
always have
ourselves
to, yeah.
down. Can you just talk a little bit about the shifts that you made that changed the relationship with your body and what that turning
Mhm.
point was?
Yeah, I definitely can. I think this is a topic that is probably one of the most resonant with any of the women that I've ever met, whether it's on the podcast, behind the scenes, or my audience. And one of the changes that I made is actually a perfect, answer to what you were saying, where we women usually kind of, someone's like, oh, you look, that color's beautiful on you. We're like, oh, this
Yeah.
old thing, I hate this thing, like me, we just deflect
Yeah.
any love, any adoration, any attention, any, like anything like that. And I think one of the things that I did was I no longer did that. I grew up in the Midwest. And in the Midwest, the way that you connect is by deflecting, making yourself small, and sort of like kind of coming together on like other people, talking bad about other people, and like agreeing to stay the same, whatever that meant. So I would deflect as like a natural part of my life, most of my life. And I'll never forget, actually, I was like 15 and I was at the grocery store. I was at Kroger, which is, in Cincinnati, Ohio. I was at Kroger buying who knows what, like Ritz crackers or something. And I was wearing yellow, which I'm wearing today. And there was this woman that came up to me and she's like, yellow looks so beautiful on you. And I started my whole journey. I was like, oh, this thing, just went on this like incredibly too long of a tangent of how yellow is not a good color for me. And she goes, it doesn't feel good to give you a compliment and have you sort of reject me in that way.
Wow, she
And
said that. Wow.
yeah, it was profound. I mean, it was
I love
profound the
that.
way she held it and the way, and God, I'm so grateful to God because God speaks through people to me all the time. And God's really given me a lot of angels in situations like that to really just kind of kick me on the right path. So I no longer participate in a lot of conversations where we're talking negatively about our body, we're talking negatively about the way that we look, we're talking negatively about other people's bodies, other people, the way that they look. By ejecting myself from that sort of dialogue and that sort of discussion, I felt so much more peace and freedom. And also, I felt so much less like pain for my friends and the women that I loved, hearing them say these things about themselves that just were absolutely not true, absolutely insane, and absolutely just, the stuff that we've heard our friends say about themselves that are
Yeah.
so far from the
Hmm.
truth is like, it's disorienting. And so, removing myself from conversations like that in life where we don't talk about workouts, we don't really talk about food, we don't talk about diets, we don't talk about that kind of stuff. And then also online, I was someone, just for a little background, that grew up with a mom and a household that really focused on looks, really focused on weight. My mom's biggest fear as a mother was that she would have fat kids. So for her, being fat was like the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And for me, coming out of the womb, a little curvy, I always had a little something going on. It was really scary to feel like I wasn't going to be loved or accepted in my household because I wasn't thin. So I made it sort of my goal in life to always have a subconscious program or a part of me that believed that I had to be thin to be loved. So that was my narrative. So everything I did in life was in order to be thin, and all of my strategizing and brain power was used to be thin. So that part of me, which people can kind of think about, the part of them that makes them believe that they're not beautiful, they're not thin, they're not pretty, oftentimes is really present when we're on social media. So, social
Mm.
media is the other example of really cutting out any accounts or people or scrolling or habits that weren't supportive of the path that I wanted to be on, that were triggering to me, that weren't supportive of me. Even if that's a healthy account, even if that's an account with recipes, even if that's a fitness account, even if that's a friend's account, it's like, it's not supportive of me on my path in this now moment. I can honor where I'm at and I can remove that sort of trigger for this now time as I'm healing. And that's the huge part about it is you taking the conversation and you taking your healing of your relationship to your body very seriously, because for so many of us, we've committed subconsciously to living a life we love or living a life where we hate the physical vehicle, the home for our soul. And we choose to fight it and shame it and blame it and contort it and restrict and just do all of these things. And we will never be who we came here to be if we hate our bodies. And we will never be the
Mm.
person that we came here to be if we hate our bodies. And we will never live a life of peace if we hate our bodies. So taking it seriously and healing, and that's through therapy, mother wound work, my own internal family systems work. That's
Yeah.
social media, and that's changing the relationship I had with other women so that we didn't always include our bodies and our looks as the baseline of our connection.
in that, if you could rewrite the message for young women to receive about their bodies,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say?
You know, Janine Roth is one of the most powerful teachers in this space. She has a book called Women, Food, and God. And it's probably the best book you could ever read about body.
Hmm.
And in it she says, you know, I know not nowhere, know how that the value of a soul is dependent on the number on a scale, and that the bigness and vastness of who you are is not dependent on the size of your pants, something like that.
Mm.
But basically, all that to say is the belief that our whole value is based on this one thing is just so limiting to the potential of who we are. And when we spend our lives focused solely on our weight and our body, we just limit everything in our life, all potential for love, for joy, for expression, for experience. And so seeing yourself as bigger than just this body vehicle and seeing yourself as a soul is really something I would love for people to really understand.
And
Thank
we've
you.
all seen that.
Yeah.
Like I've done that where I've gone out for dinner with girlfriends and, when you say, "Do you want some dessert?" And they're like, "Oh, no, no, no."
I know.
And it's like or
Mhm,
they hardly eat and they're watching
mhm,
you eat. And
mhm,
it
mhm.
is limiting.
I don't but I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sorry I, like, interrupted you because I have
No,
so
no.
many
Yeah.
thoughts on that where I love my friends are not perfect. My friends have their body issues. My friends have their weight issues, but I actually don't. I no longer have people that are very close to me in my life with eating disorders or disordered eating, just because that sort of dialogue of their subconscious and their psyche and the clocking of what
Mm.
I'm doing and how I'm eating and how I'm relating to food in the body, it just isn't something that feels like the most expansive relationship template for me. And so I
Yeah.
actually don't really hang out with a lot of people that do that kind of thing anymore because there's just a lot of psychic space that's used in that type of comparison or clocking. And I've lived my whole life with that, with my mother and with other women. And it's so liberating to be around women that just eat what they want, eat till they're
Yeah.
full, eat when they're
Yeah.
hungry, and feel liberated in it.
Yeah.
And that point, like you talked about in chapter 6, the power of nourishment,
Mhm.
right? So, um, and I'm someone who looks at food as fuel. I very fit. I love eating very healthy. I do have a love affair with Kit Kats and I would say nachos. And I'm good with that. So with that relationship with food that you had, how did you heal it? Like, what was a
Mhm,
pivoting moment?
mhm,
I know you talked about that
mhm,
moment in the store when
mhm.
someone
Yeah.
said, comment you in
Mhm.
the yellow. Was that the same for food?
No, I will never forget. I was walking across my living room. I lived in a really small one bedroom in Venice, just no air conditioning, wood floor with my ex. And I was doing my normal math of how many calories I burned at my workout, how many steps took, how many calories were in my breakfast, how many fat was in my breakfast, the weight that I wanted to be versus the weight that I was, what math was that, what the weight of the Victoria's Secret model, that
Wow.
was my goal weight. You know, I was doing my normal daily math of my, my little charts in my mind. And I was just like, I just had this surrender moment, a true, 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 true surrender of I'm going to live the rest of my life like this. I'm going to hate my body for the rest of my life. Maybe in the next lifetime, I'm going to have a good
Mm.
relationship with my body. And I was just like, all right, this is what it is. And actually, that surrender, Carl Rogers, who's the father of therapy as we know it today, he talks about something called the paradox of transformation. And it's really weird because to transform something, we have to first accept it as it is. So I had to really accept where I was in my life and what I was doing. So I fully accepted that. And then I surrendered it and was like, okay, this is what it is. And it's not like that was the only thing that I did, but that really created spaciousness around acknowledging the truth of where I was and acknowledging that I didn't need to do anything in this moment, but really just accept that I was struggling
Mm.
and accept that I was living in this prison that I was creating for myself every single day. And that sort of propelled a curiosity around getting help, working with a therapist that specialized in eating disorders and disordered eating, and then starting a lot of reading and just sort of a discovery more of myself beyond my physical looks. I think that
Mm.
was really one of the biggest things too is when you find work that feels purposeful, or maybe even when you have kids, when you find purpose outside of just what you look like, it's so much easier to kind of forget about the body. And so when we found almost 30, I was like, oh my God, this is my purpose. I love it. And
Yeah.
it almost like filled me up so much that I wasn't so much like, oh my God, what do I look like all the time? So that purpose really helped. Therapy helped. And then internal family systems, which is a psychotherapy technique that's really, really powerful. It's called parts work, basically. People can look that up, but that was incredibly helpful for me in
How
my
do you
healing.
spell that? Parts? P-A-R.
It's called internal family system, so IFS. And then
Okay.
it's basically parts work. So you really take yourself in parts. So you personify your experiences. So in this example with the body, the part of us that believes that we have to be thin to be loved is a part. That
Right.
came from my mom. That came from being in the 90s when there were shows about being fat. That came from all of this media programming, but it's not
Right.
all of me. There's a soul that exists beyond me that believes I'm greater and worthier than that. So parts work is helpful for people that struggle with
Love
food
that.
and body in a really deep way.
Well, even when you think the other day, my husband said to me, he goes, I notice you're not wearing your Apple Watch. And I'm like, no, I'm done with it. Because I'm so tired of telling me you haven't reached your goal and this is how many calories you've burned. And I don't know when I realized, like, you know what, this actually isn't healthy for me.
Powerful.
And so I'm not wearing it. But
Powerful.
I'm mindful of the
Time.
time
Yes.
because we have a lot, but we are grateful that you're here. But we wanted to sort of have, before we say goodbye to you, we have like a quick last 5 questions we would love to ask you. And this one isn't an easy one, but what do you think happens when you leave this planet, when you leave this body?
I believe in heaven. I believe, that there is a place. I believe it's able to be created here on earth, but I just believe that there's a place in which our souls are guided to yet again. And um, yeah, where there is just this lightness, brightness, where love is everything.
Mm.
I'm kind of smiling and laughing as I'm saying this because I think as a mom, I'm curious if you guys have experienced this. I've been just like confronted with that idea of mortality, I think more than ever. And it's just such a weird thing to like
Mhm.
not be in a place right in this moment where I'm like, I'm okay with dying. Like I'm not in this moment. And it's like, I think
Yeah.
that's part of the faith journey as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I just want to be around forever to be with my child and children and
Aw.
family. So it's
Yeah.
like a very funny place to be where I'm like, okay. You
Yeah.
should live to go to heaven and all these things, but I'm like, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
But I do believe in heaven.
Yeah.
I love y'all. I was expecting like ketchup and mustard. Ketchup or mustard. I was like, all right, I'm ready.
I know.
Like, where do you go when you die? I'm like, okay, wow, I love this.
That's
Is
too
like
easy.
you
We
are
have some easier
my type
questions.
of people. This is me when I was dating. I would go on
Yeah.
dates and be like, so what do you think happens when we die? And they're like,
Yeah.
I think that I go to my soul home and I think there's heaven, sure. I don't know, I could just see myself turning into light and just going back to my little soul tribe and soul family on some other planet and then just maybe doing this another time. But yes, I believe in God and greater source and um I know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, who would play you in a movie?
Gosh, who do I want? I'm like Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like
That's a good one.
obviously, guys, Margot. Who I could see? Kristen Bell.
Totally.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
sound
you
like
sound,
her.
yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that would
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
my one.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was
Lindsay?
going to say the same thing. 'Cause
Oh,
I feel
good.
like we both gotten though.
Yeah.
The show that she's
Yes. Love
Nobody
that. What was
wants
it
on
it.
with the
called? Yeah.
podcast and the
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
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 What is a guest that you would love to have on your show that you haven't had on yet?
It's not, I'm pausing and it's not like there aren't people, but I'm like, at this point in time in our journey, I'm interested in having conversations that feel different and more envelope pushing. So the people that I'm thinking about aren't necessarily people that I'm like, I align to or I'm in love with, but people that have a perspective that's very different than mine.
Yeah.
And so, not even to name names because it's like that might take people on a journey where I'm not really trying to have people go, but I'm really would love, I think that would be my desire to have more envelope pushing conversations with people that I disagree with or people that have a different perspective that I think our audience could really our audience and myself could really benefit from having a conversation with.
I like that.
Yeah, this is always a hard
Lindsay's
one.
still
This is not the
thinking.
first time that I'm like, I don't know. You know, we've
Okay.
had so many incredible guests, over like 800 guests, and I know there are
Wow.
some, but I
Mark
always feel like
Nepo?
say it again.
Mark Nepo for you?
Sure.
There you go.
Okay. That was so dumb.
So you know what?
You're like,
Because-
didn't you like that book you wrote?
Yeah, I did, honestly. I'm like,
we're not going to get to the 5 questions because I'm very aware of the time. But what I'm going to do, in your book, you say pass the mic.
Oh, this is
And I love that you do that as a way of offering someone else's wisdom. So we would like to pass the mic to you and let you close off the show for us.
Well, first, thank you. I mean, would be remiss to not thank you for such a beautiful conversation and for reminding me how amazing and incredible it is to be who we are and do what we do. You know, sometimes in my day to day, I can get kind of caught up in to-do lists and, you know, running from thing to thing. But when I'm able to sit down with women like yourselves and souls like yourselves that are authentic and genuine and smart and truthful and God-centered, it's just the greatest gift. So thank you to God and thank you to you all for inviting us on and for reading the book. It means the absolute world. So deep gratitude there for this conversation. And I think I would just love to leave people with just the invitation to take just a moment or two every single day to turn their gaze inward and to turn their attention inward and just ask themselves how they're doing. I think we so often want others to really tend to us and care for us and get curious about us and do all the things that we could essentially do to ourselves. And I think a really simple way to practice taking care of yourself is just to genuinely ask yourself how you're doing and listen to the response.
Yeah, I just think it's important to note that if you're moving through an intense period of change, that you can trust the timing of your life, that you can trust that it's not all on you, that you have the support of, I think, you know, the greatest collaborator ever, which is your soul. And it can be the life adventure that you wish for. I think it just takes that true trust in yourself and that faith in what is for you will never miss you. And yeah, I'm just really honored that we get to be a very small part of people's lives in this way. So yeah, thank you for asking us to come on and being introduced to your audience and your daughters and your sons. It's truly an honor.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much. And for our listeners, get the book. It's so great. You will not regret it. We adore you guys. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. The Helen and MT podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and should not be taken as professional advice. For guidance regarding your personal health, wellness, and other matters, please consult a qualified professional.